You came from VFX.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, prior to VFX, I had many different careers leading up to it. But yeah, I would say that I come from a background of visual effects. If I were to kind of distill it that way,
Yeah,
for sure.
So what's that mean? So I know you when you were pretty much at ILM. What was it like before that? What were you doing before that?
I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time, I guess. So prior to ILM, I've had many different jobs leading up to it. A lot of it really not related to CG. You know, the typical. I think all of us go through it, like finding your way, proving yourself, trying. I worked for this post-production facility, like taping, dubbing from Avids into like tape decks, thinking that that would probably lead me to better places, and but in the end, they got me buying donuts for the directors every 6 a.m. Sort of thing, and yeah, just I had a stint in Texas for Jimmy Neutron. My first film credit, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. We were using Lightwave, so it was my crash course in really using a software package deep in production. So that was a very invaluable experience for me. And from there, just it led me to ILM, which was my childhood dream to work for, essentially.
Yeah. And what about schooling?
I went to Seneca College in Canada.
In Canada, okay.
Yeah, in Canada. It wasn't really, I would say, something that I found useful. It was just sort of a means to get to where I wanted to be. So it was like a pretty short course that I just wanted to kind of, get out of the way to tell my parents, like, yeah, I kind of went to school for this, and but in truth, I think I could have totally skipped school and had just like bought a computer, kind of just devoted a lot of time, which is what I ended up doing anyway. Like I would not really participate much into the lab or homework stuff that they gave us. I would just do my own modeling and 3D Studio V1 Max version 1 or 3D Studio DOS, kind of just going deep in that program and learning modeling in my own terms, rather than like build a scene with spheres and cones and render, like
right.
Yeah. So that's not gonna get me to ILM.
Do you still feel like that's the same, that people can skip some element of college?
I don't know. Like I think I would always be cautious to, when I answer such questions, I would say, based on my experience, if it was me, yeah, but I think everyone's different, right? But from my point of view, looking at what is out there, the resources that's out there, schools, like, for a tech school, but like I'm talking more about like maybe Academy of Art or like these expensive universities. I personally feel that those are skippable in terms of what we do in the industry. I think there's enough resources online, and it's all about really the time you put in. I think for me, I learned the most when it's just me in my computer learning it. Now, I think the benefit of schooling is, you have your other classmates and stuff like that. So I'm not diminishing the value of that, but is it really worth paying the amount of money students are paying and getting in debt for?
Yeah.
I don't know. Only they can answer that. So in my head, no, it's not worth it. But that's not up to me to say, really.
I have a talk next week that we're calling Skip the Art School Circus.
Oh.
Yeah, little clickbait there for some people.
Yeah. Hit that subscribe button, smash it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I run a school. It's called school, but at the end of the day, I think, people can skip school, but they can't skip education.
Yeah.
And I think you're like a great example of that because, I hear you say like, you did your own thing and you did that class, but I mean, I saw you take the time, educate yourself, like that stuff you're doing with anatomy tools, the stuff that you did with Carlos Fuentes, like you apprenticed yourself to those tasks. And I mean, you worked at them like you were going to law school,
Yeah. And I think that's the part that you can't really teach. Like you have to have it in you to, and I don't know, honestly, like, I don't know how I found that philosophy. I always thought myself as a slacker. Like, never really thought of myself as someone who would amount to anything more than McDonald's. Like, seriously, that was like my long-term plan. But yeah, like exactly what you said, the apprenticeship, like that mindset of the Richard McDonald, when I took his course, he labeled it as the perfect practice, right?
Yeah.
Like you practice. That's how you do it,
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. And, you worked hard. Why don't we talk about like what you found was really powerful for you? So I remember when I was looking at your work and I'm remembering, now I remember clearly you working with Carlos, and I don't know if you were working like in connection with him or what the relationship was there, but I remember seeing you developing these like primary forms based on Carlos and really talking about workflow and really just kind of working through each one of these paces very clearly. And it kind of like, I actually use you to some extent as an example for some students when we talk about this idea that mastery is not magic, it's process. You just have to learn the process and, and then eventually you're going to be the master.
Yeah. I mean, the whole concept of the hierarchy of forms, I mean, I'm sure that's been taught in, classical sculpture and art and all that stuff. But I, in the world of CG, I hadn't really heard of it until Carlos, when we first collaborated together, which was a petrifying thing because I saw him as this figure of like, oh my God, he's just gonna mince me up and just throw, like. He was this like perfectionist, and I'm like, how could I measure up? And then I finally gained his trust, and he for me, it was like that golden nugget of knowledge, someone like him imparted on someone like me who's just like knew nothing at that point. Like, and for me, that was a hierarchy of forms: primary, secondary, and tertiary. When he explained that to me, that was just like, everything just kind of like opened up, and it's like, it changed the way I thought about not just sculpture, but a lot of my approach, even in daily life, right? Like, oh, what's the most important, I'm gonna go to a trip. What is the primary form task that I need to do? And then go to the least important. And so in ZBrush terms or digital sculpting terms, figure out what the most important readable shapes are. Secondary to that to enhance the readable shapes, and tertiary to that, go in that list of importance. So yeah, when he taught that to me, I was applying it in CG, early in the days of Mudbox, and then ZBrush when I transitioned from Mudbox to ZBrush, yeah, that's always been sort of my thing ever since then. Like really, and when we talk about the perfect practice, it is that I practice. And the simple, it seems simple, right? The three forms that I've been practicing throughout my time here in this industry. It's always been that. So.
Yeah, there's a great book called The One Thing. And I didn't realize until you just said it that you carried that off into your life too, because I do the same thing. It's like I wake up and start the day and I'm writing down, and it's always what's my one thing.
Yeah.
And in the business too, because there's like a million things, and I got payroll and I got all this other stuff coming at me, and I'm like, just what's my one thing today that's going to change, make a difference.
Yeah, and it makes it simple and approachable, right? Like it gets rid of the clutter.
Yeah.